Welcome to today's EB-5 Q&A session. I'm Trevor O'Neill with LA Life Regional Center. Today we're going to talk about the Reform and Integrity Act of 2022, or RIA for short, and its implications for investors, regional centers, developers, and promoters. With me today is David Van Voren, immigration attorney from David Herson & Partners. Thank you for joining me, folks. So let's dive right in with questions. The Reform and Integrity Act was enacted by Congress in 2022 and has brought a lot of changes to the EB-5 program. But how does it affect people who already invested in a project pre-RIA?
Sure, Trevor. So the 2022 Act, which we call RIA or RIA, included grandfathering, and in this context refers to the preservation of eligibility for all pre-RIA investors, allowing them to continue with the EB-5 process without being affected by the changes introduced by RIA in 2022. This basically means that pre-2022 investors that invested the minimum amount of $500,000 will not be affected by the increase in the minimum investment amount, which is now $800,000. There are several other rule changes that went into effect in 2022 as well, but those will not those new rules will not impact investors that invested prior to 2022. Additionally, looking forward, grandfathering involves petitioners also who file their I-526 petitions now under the RIA new law. And basically this means that, so RIA was only passed for a 5-year term, but basically if it is unlikely, but if it does get expired, any investors that are investing now would not be impacted because they are protected by this grandfathering clause.
Great. So good to know that existing investors are still protected. So next question is, how does the 2022 Act affect the minimum investment amounts for the new filings?
Sure. So the main or definitely the change that most people will be aware of is the increased investment amount. So the minimum investment for new filings is now $800,000 in a targeted employment area, with adjustments for inflation every 5 years starting in 2027. So to qualify as a TEA and that lower investment amount of $800,000, the EB-5 project must be located in a high unemployment or rural area. However, there is also a small number of investors that may also be able to go into infrastructure projects that also qualify as a TEA.
Good. Now, can you explain the concept of reserved visas that are mentioned in RIA?
Sure. So after probably the increased investment amount, the most relevant and kind of primary, most important update we see with RIA is this reserved visa concept. So basically, reserved visas are set aside for specific categories of investors, such as those investing in rural areas or high unemployment areas, which is referring to the TEAs that I just mentioned. And essentially, these reserved visas can help expedite the immigration process from investors from countries with high demand. So this starts with China, number one, but then other countries as well, most likely Vietnam and India. So if you're able to, get your application in soon towards the front of this line, when investors started investing under these new rules, there should be visas available.
Very good. So what are the key changes that were introduced in RIA regarding investment arrangements?
So in addition to the increased investment amount and the set-aside visas, which I just talked about, the RIA introduces several changes, including restrictions on redemption and debt arrangements, as well as stricter guidelines and compliance measures for how EB-5 projects handle EB-5 investment funds. Additionally, the purchase of certain bonds may no longer qualify as an eligible investment.
I see. How does the 2022 change impact adjustment of status for investors?
Sure. So this has been a big benefit for EB-5 investors, one of several benefits, but this is definitely one of the primary benefits of the RIA, of the 2022 Act. And basically, the 2022 Act made it possible for investors to concurrently file applications for adjustment of status along with their I-526 petition, which is the EB-5 petition. This essentially allows investors to remain in the U.S. and enjoy work and travel authorization while their green card application is pending. Concurrent filing has been an option under several other immigration categories for years, so it's not a new concept, but the 2022 Act made it an option for EB-5 investors going forward.
And that's key, so investors don't have to return to their home country for consular processing. They can do it here in the United States.
Yes, absolutely. So to file that adjustment of status, you do have to be present in the U.S. Yeah, if the investor is in the U.S., they can file their EB-5 case and basically wait for it to be approved. And in the meantime, they get work and travel authorization.
David, what are the implications of RIA for regional centers?
The RIA imposes much stricter requirements on regional centers, basically a lot more compliance measures, including enhanced record keeping, as well as a lot of fund administration and oversight rules. So basically, regional centers will also be subject to more rigorous oversight and auditing by USCIS to ensure compliance with these new regulations. And regional centers basically have to file annual reports to the government stating exactly how EB-5 investor funds have been used. So a lot more transparency in the program, and that, in my opinion, is a significant benefit for investors and will keep bad actors and some of the more problematic regional centers and projects out of the marketplace.
Yeah, and I share your sentiment there and that opinion. So how does RIA address the issue of material changes to a project?
The 2022 Act reinforces USCIS policy regarding material changes to projects. Material changes to a project may result in a denial or a revocation of an investor's petition. So it is essential for investors and regional centers to carefully assess any changes to projects and ensure compliance with the new requirements. So that material change subject is one thing that USCIS has not clearly defined, but basically the less changes there are to a project, to the investment structure, to the overall project, the better. If you start with, a hotel and then now you're doing a Burger King somewhere else, that would be, while not clear definition of material change, that would most likely be a material change.
That sounds like a material change to me too, yes. So how do investors navigate the complexities of the EB-5 program under RIA? It's a complicated process.
It absolutely is. And yeah, there are new complexities introduced by the 2022 Act. So it is crucial, in my opinion, for investors to seek guidance from experienced legal professionals in the EB-5 industry. So at David Hurston & Partners, our team of immigration, securities, and business attorneys have been in the EB-5 program for decades now. Our managing partner filed one of the first EB-5 cases way back in 1990. So with his experience, we can almost literally say that no one in the industry has more experience than we do. And also just the reason why kind of the experience and having a large volume of EB-5 cases is so critical for the legal professionals on our side is so that we understand kind of the adjudication trends and any changes that USCIS may be implementing as per their interpretation of the law. So you have the 2022 Act, the RIA, so that's all, written down on paper, but how it gets implemented by USCIS can sometimes be kind of not a different story, but have some, nuances to actually how they implement the law. So you do want an EB-5 attorney who has a lot of experience dealing with USCIS and basically having a lot of cases being filed so that we can basically notify and notice any trends possibly occurring, and as well as, potentially spotting any red flags that could be an issue for investors who are preparing their cases now.
Well, David, thank you for joining us on our Q&A session and answering the common questions that investors have regarding the Reform and Integrity Act. If you have any further questions or would like to learn more about the EB-5 program, how it applies to you, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at LA Life Regional Center.